So I put the dumper inside the workshop. I'm going to look at changing the centre ball on the articulation on the pivot here. Basically, it's absolutely knackered. So I've got the whole front end held up with a trolley jack at the minute. The retainer has fallen out and the front section's been just rubbing on the rear section, which has just been dreadful. The ball joint's knackered. It's worn the head away off the bolt. It's made the metal really thin, so I've got a big piece of steel to repair that with. I need to split the dumper and, well, as best I can, and cut this section out and weld it all up and plate it up. This side is fine, it's just the top and the bottom plate here. As I say, I've got a huge piece of 12mm steel that I can put in there, cut it all out nicely and do that. The bolt's completely seized in the ball joint there. I have just cut that nut off with the grinder, so at least the top's off. This top joint is seized completely solid as well. I've tried heating it, I've tried everything with it, and the bolt's just seized within the ball joint on the top there. So there's two ball joints on, I think that's called a king arm. There's one at the front here and one back here underneath the plate. You can just sort of see the nut for it there. Well, that arm's about 400 odd quid, so I'm not gonna spend that on that top arm. It's not worn out or anything. It's just the fact it won't come undone. So I'm going to try and just split it from the bottom, sort of tip it and pull the top end away and let it swivel on that joint and pull the bottom away. I've got it under axle stands at the minute, so it's not going anywhere fast. But yeah, I'm going to try and get a 1mm cutting disc through the gap here and cut that. I might be onto a losing battle there. And also cut the bottom section there. So we'll see if I can get that out next. So that's what's left of the centre pivot ball joint. I finally got it out and split the dumper as much as it's going to go. Here is my template I drew for marking up the repair panel. I've decided to cut it square just because it's going to be a lot easier to fit. So I'll grind it all out and make sure it's really clean and decent to weld up. So yeah, I'm going to cut this out next. I've got to make two of these, one for the top, one for the bottom, and that should work nicely. I'm going to weld one of those to each one and then pack around that with weld all the way around to make like a nice fat mount for it for the bolt to go through. My new pivot is in here, so that's all ready to go back together when the repairs are done. So this is one of my repair plates for the centre pivot on this old dumper. Here's the old piece I've cut out. So as you can see, that's been rubbing for a long time and worn its way, big oval, and just worn itself out. So I've managed to cut this out, make a nice 32mm hole in it, and I've just welded a 32mm sleeve in there. So that's looking good. It's been a right ordeal cutting this section out, as it's been a real pain to get into. As I say, the top joint there is completely solid, so I can't split the actual dumper in half without spending a whole load of money buying all new bits to replace the top with. But the top, it's not worn out, but it's just seized. So I've cut the bottom out, cleaned all that up, so I think we can get some decent weld in there. Cut the top plate out. I still have yet to tidy all this section up here, grind it all back, and get it nice and clean, ready for the new top piece to go into. But it's going to be similar to this one, in where I've cut where it's gone. I've cut the repair plate out. In my box of parts, here it is. So I've cut the top plate out. Got to weld a sleeve like that onto here, drilled the 32mm hole, and then I'll weld that bottom one in first, get this one ready so it's got the tube welded on and prepared, ready to weld in place, and then I'll offer the bolt up through the ball joint to make sure everything's 100% lined up, and then I can tack it and seam weld it in place, and hopefully it'll all just fall together. So I've now managed to clean up all of this area with the grinder and the little air grinder and the belt sander as best I can. I've got it looking pretty good. Put the new ball joint into this half of the dumper. So it goes in, you can see it's quite badly worn, all of this steel away here. I might just run a bead of weld just on that bit as it's supposed to be recessed in. But that's just how it is. I'll put the new plate underneath. So that's bolted up quite nicely. I've got the plate to go here as well. So what I was doing, I thought, well, if I bolt the ball in first, then I can offer the top plate and the bottom plate in, know that the pin goes through, and then it will be straight. Then I can tack everything up and then go mad and seam weld it all in. So that's the next part. Yeah, I'll run some weld there and yeah, we'll go from there. We've just tacked the new bottom piece in, 4 tacks there and there and there. So that's now located roughly where it needs to be. I put also just a seam of weld on the top of that bearing edge there just to stop it pushing through on that section, because it is recessed all the way around. So that's looking all right as well. That's obviously fine. So we'll have a look at offering the bolt up through the bottom and through the bearing, and then seeing how the top plate lies next. I can find somewhere to wedge this. So I just seam welded the bottom repair section in, got the welder cranked up and just taken my time with it, just pulling the weld in nicely. So that's all in and around the back there, and you can see it's quite good. I see quite good heat penetration there in the steel, so just a little bit there where I started. So yeah, I'll try and weld under here, seam all that underside up next so it's doubly welded. My ball joint is in. Quite happy with that. I thought I'd get that bottom plate all welded in nicely. Now it's straight, and then put the bolt through, align the top plate where it needs to be, tack it, and then weld it up. So that's the next bit to do. So this is my top plate I've been making. I've welded a 32mm sleeve over there, and I've drilled out a 32mm hole there. And this is my repair panel, obviously, for the top of this pivot. The bottom one is in. I've welded all that in. I've put the boot in and popped the pin through, the bolt. I've cleaned all this lot out ready for the new one to go in, but I thought, well, I'll offer the collar up and then tack it and then weld that in place and just make sure it all fits nicely, which it does. So we're going to have a look at fitting that next. I'm just going to blow that ball joint out with the airline quickly. Right, so that's free from any swarf or anything horrible going down there. I've got a new boot for the top of that ball joint. I believe that just sort of sits on there like that, and then that compresses in on right up against each side of the plate, and then obviously when you pack it with grease, it just holds the grease within that ball, which is handy. I think they're supposed to sort of flatten out. Yeah, like that, which it should do when it's bolted in. Bit awkward to put the camera. There's the top plate going on. I might just tap that down, but I think that's pretty much where it wants to be. Oh yeah, he's down on that, which is good. Oh, that's not there. If I just put that nut and washer on there, that will just hold it taut as to where it wants to be. It is a nice tight fit. It's going to be the tightest this old dumper's been in a long time. That is tight. Oh, that's pulled down lovely. That was 2. Looking good. Now we can get the welder in and have a weld around. So that's gone like that. That boot will just splay out a little bit. I'm going to get the welder in here and seam weld that plate all the way around next. I'll tack it on the corners in each corner and then weld it. Couple of tacks in. And just one over here. That's looking just tacked in each corner there. Hopefully that's going to be spot on. I just wanted to get it so if I start seam welding it, it's not going to pull it out of joint. Having 4 big tacks in there, I think is perfect now. And we will look to weld that up. So that big piece is all seam welded in. I managed to weld it all the way around, luckily. I've welded it in places underneath as well, you can't really see. But I've managed to get 2 big seams underneath, which is good. I've just thought I'll gusset the corners here and tie them in with 2 triangles just there and there. So I'm going to just seam weld those into. I think it's going to be more than strong enough. I mean, the original plate was only stitched in a couple of inches and then a big space and then a couple of inches, so I don't see it going anywhere. It was a 2-ton dumper to start with, and I'm effectively just putting a loader on it, which will probably end up being the same sort of weight as it being laden anyway, maybe not even that much. So hopefully that should be enough, but we'll seam those gussets in just now. I don't think that one's going anywhere. It's got plenty of decent weld around it. We'll go in and do the same on the other side. Right, and that's that bit in. See if the pipe's in the way there, but that's that in. So I'm happy that that is now welded back together. Dumper's now as one rather than in 2 bits falling apart. So that's good. I'll look at putting some primer on there and painting it up, and then I'll put the grease nipple in there before we're much older. Position the bolt to where it needs to be so I can get to it with a grease gun, and then pump some grease into it, and hopefully it will fill that joint up. Very quick coat of black paint there, just on the bare metal. I probably will paint it all up orange or yellow, or whatever I can get my hands on. I have put the grease nipple in now and made sure that nut's tight. So I'll get the grease gun and see if we can fill that joint up with grease. So I've packed that out with some grease. Has started pushing grease out around the edges there, so I'm happy that that's getting plenty of grease in there, which is good. That bolt's working. I will give it a test drive, let plenty of movement around that ball happen, and then repack it with grease just so it's got plenty in there. But yeah, I'm really happy at that. That's really, well, it's tightened the whole dumper back together again, which is good, because that was a major worry when that joint was completely collapsed as bad as it was. But I think she's coming well. We'll move on to putting the loader on next.